I was never supposed to be in that room. They were laughing, drinking champagne worth more than my monthly salary, talking about power, deals, and people like me, as if we were invisible. Then someone said it. "Why don't you bring your maid?" They laughed. I froze. And that's when he looked at me. Not like a joke. Not like a servant. Like a decision. By the end of that night, every eye in the room was on me. And the joke? It wasn't funny anymore. Because I didn't just walk into their world. I changed it. The night everything changed started as a joke I didn't even know I was part of. Crystal lights spilled over the marble floors of Blackwood Estate, glowing so bright they reflected like liquid gold. I'd polished those floors hundreds of times, memorized every corner of that mansion. But that night, I was invisible, standing just beyond the open doors with a tray of empty glasses in my hands. Laughter echoed from the living room. Nathan Blackwood stood at the center of it all. 34. Tech investment mogul. Untouchable reputation. The kind of man people lowered their voices around. His friends lounged on velvet sofas, dressed in tailored suits and arrogance. I knew their faces, not because they knew mine, but because people like me learned early how to observe quietly. "Going to the Harrington charity gala alone again?" one of them teased. Another laughed. Maybe the Ice King finally scared everyone off. Nathan didn't react. He never did. But I felt the tension shift, subtle, sharp. Then someone said it. "Why don't you bring your maid?" The quiet one. The small one who looks like she might faint if you talk too loudly. That would be hilarious. The laughter that followed sliced straight through me. I froze. They didn't know I was standing there. Or maybe they didn't care. My fingers tightened around the tray. My heartbeat suddenly loud in my ears. I told myself to breathe. To stay invisible. That was how I survived. But then the room went quiet. "I'll take her." Nathan's voice was calm. Too calm. Shock rippled through the room, followed by amusement. I didn't look up until I heard footsteps approaching. He stood in the hallway, tall and unreadable, eyes locking onto mine like he'd just noticed me for the first time. "Tonight," he said, "you'll accompany me to the Harrington Gala." I blinked, certain I'd misunderstood. "Sir, do you need help with service?" I asked quietly. "I can arrange." "No," he interrupted. "You'll be my guest." My heart skipped, then stumbled. His guest? That made no sense. I lived in the staff quarters behind the estate. I worked hourly. Every dollar I earned went toward my younger brother's medical bills. Galas were worlds I cleaned after, not places I belonged. "I think there's been a mistake," I whispered. "There isn't," he replied. "Be ready by 7. And then he turned and walked away. I stood there long after he was gone, holding an empty tray, feeling like the ground beneath me had shifted without warning. I didn't know about the bet. I didn't know about the mockery. I only knew one thing. My job depended on obedience. At 7 o'clock, I opened the old wooden chest at the foot of my bed. Inside was the only thing I'd kept from my mother, a midnight blue dress, simple, elegant, with tiny pearls hand-stitched along the neckline. It wasn't new. It wasn't expensive. But it was mine. If I'm going, I whispered to myself, I'll go with dignity. I had no idea that the moment I stepped out of that room, nothing in my life would ever return to the way it was. At 6:45, there was a knock on my door. Not the casual knock from the other staff. This one was firm. Deliberate. When I opened it, a woman stood there holding a garment bag and a clipboard. Her eyes moved over me quickly, not judgmental, just assessing. "Mr. Blackwood asked me to assist you," she said. "We don't have much time." I didn't ask questions. I learned a long time ago that questions made people uncomfortable when they'd already decided your role. The guest suite I was taken to look like something from a magazine spread. Soft lighting. Silk curtains. A vanity covered in makeup I couldn't pronounce. The woman worked efficiently. She pinned my hair up, then let a few strands fall loose as if by accident. She didn't overdo my makeup, just enough to sharpen what was already there. When she unzipped the garment bag and lifted the dress out, I felt my throat tighten. It was ivory satin, Clean lines, no excess. Elegant in a way that didn't beg for attention. This was selected for you, she said. But how you carry it, that's up to you. I nodded, suddenly aware of my hands shaking. The moment I stepped into the hallway, conversation stopped. Not because I was stunning, but because I didn't look like what they expected. Nathan was waiting near the stairs. When he turned, his expression shifted, just slightly. Surprise, quickly masked. You're ready, he said. Yes, sir. For tonight. He replied, You may call me Nathan. That felt more unsettling than being ordered. The drive to the gala was silent. City lights blurred past the windows as I watched my reflection. Someone familiar, but sharper. Straighter. Someone who didn't apologize with her posture. Why me? I asked suddenly. He glanced over. Because they underestimate you, he said. And they won't see it coming. I didn't know whether to be grateful or insulted. The Harrington Grand Hall glowed like a jewel box. Cameras flashed. Names were announced. Laughter floated through the air like expensive perfume. When the attendant called Nathan's name, the crowd turned. And then they saw me. The pause was immediate. Eyes narrowed. Smiles stalled. Whispers rippled outward like a dropped glass. I felt it, all of it. Judgment. Curiosity. Disbelief. I lifted my chin. If they were going to stare, I wouldn't shrink. Inside, the room hummed with quiet calculation. Women in couture glanced at me once, then twice. Men tried not to stare too long, then failed. Who is she? Someone murmured behind us. Nathan's hand hovered near my back, not touching, just close enough to suggest possession. I hated that I noticed. I hated that it worked. At the center of the room, a woman stepped forward. Tall. Impeccable. Dangerous smile. Welcome, Nathan, she said. Her eyes flicked to me. And you brought a company. Yes, he replied evenly. This is Elena Ward. My name landed in the room like a challenge. She studied me longer than necessary. Well, she said smoothly, this should be interesting. As she walked away, Nathan leaned closer. They're already unsettled, he said quietly. Good. I swallowed. What exactly are you trying to prove? He looked at me, really looked this time. That I don't play by their rules, he said. And neither do you tonight. I didn't know if that was a warning or an invitation. All I knew was that every eye in the room followed me as we moved forward. And somewhere between the chandeliers and the quiet hostility, I realized. I wasn't the joke anymore. I was the disruption. The first confrontation came sooner than I expected. It happened near the champagne table, where conversations gathered like weapons disguised as compliments. A woman in emerald silk stepped into my path. She smiled politely, but her eyes held calculation. You must be new, she said. I don't believe we've met. Her tone wasn't curious. It was territorial. I replied calmly. And you're right, we haven't. She tilted her head. Interesting. Nathan usually prefers discretion. Nathan's jaw tightened beside me. Before he could speak, I did. Discretion is useful, I said. But so is transparency. The woman blinked. That hadn't been the answer she expected. Others drifted closer, pretending not to listen. You'll have to forgive us, another woman added lightly. We're just surprised. Nathan doesn't bring dates. I'm not a date, I said. The circle quieted. I'm a guest. A small distinction. But a deliberate one. The emerald-dressed woman recovered quickly. And what do you do exactly? She asked. Besides attend charity galas? I met her gaze. I manage operations, I said. Mostly crisis mitigation. Nathan looked at me then, surprised. Crisis mitigation, she repeated. Yes, I said. I help people fix problems before they become public disasters. Silence followed. It wasn't admiration. It was recalibration. A man nearby laughed, trying to lighten the tension. Well, he said, you certainly don't sound like staff. I turned to him. I'm not, I said. But even if I were, that wouldn't make me incapable. The smile slid off his face. Nathan's friends watched from across the room, their earlier amusement gone. One of them raised an eyebrow, clearly rethinking the joke they'd started. "You didn't tell us she was articulate," someone muttered. "I heard it." So did Nathan. "Because I don't categorize people that way," he said coldly. That earned him a few raised glasses. And a few narrowed eyes. Later, during dinner, I was seated beside a man who introduced himself as a board member of a major venture fund. "So how did you and Nathan meet?" he asked casually. I took a sip of water. "At work?" I said. Nathan choked on his wine. I didn't look at him. The truth didn't need clarification. By the time dessert was served, the atmosphere had changed. People asked my opinion, sought my input, listened. And with every word I spoke, I felt something shift inside me. Not confidence. Recognition. When the evening finally slowed, Nathan leaned in. "You knew exactly what you were doing," he said quietly. "I was answering questions," I replied. "He studied me." That was the moment they realized you weren't temporary. I exhaled slowly. "Neither was I said. Across the room, I caught sight of the emerald-dressed woman watching me with a new expression. Not disdain. Assessment. That's when I understood. I hadn't just survived their scrutiny. I'd earned their attention. And in their world, attention was never free. The attention didn't fade after that night. It sharpened. The following morning, the mansion felt different, quieter, watchful. Conversations stopped when I entered a room. Eyes lingered a second longer than before. I wasn't invisible anymore. And that made people uncomfortable. Nathan didn't mention the gala. Not at breakfast. Not when we passed in the hall. Not even when his assistant handed him a stack of files and glanced at me like I was part of the equation now. I realized then, whatever game he'd started, he was letting it play out. Without interference. The test came that afternoon. His house manager, Mrs. Caldwell, summoned me to her office. She'd worked there longer than anyone, efficient, loyal, proud of her authority. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I sat. She folded her hands. "You caused quite a stir last night," she said. "People are asking questions." I answered some. I replied evenly. She studied me. "You should be careful," she said. "This isn't your world." I met her gaze. "I didn't say it was," I said. "But I was invited into it." A pause. "That invitation can be revoked." "So can my silence," I replied. The words surprised even me. She leaned back slowly. "What exactly do you want?" she asked. I thought for a moment. "Clarity," I said. "About my role. About expectations. And about whether I'm being discussed as a person or a problem." Her eyes narrowed. "You're bold." "No," I said. "I'm precise." Later that day, a guest arrived unannounced. Victoria Hale, the woman in emerald silk from the gala. She found me in the garden, standing among the roses I usually trimmed in silence. "You wear confidence well," she said. "Most people borrow it." "I didn't come here to impress," I replied. She smiled. "Good. Because this was never about that." She walked a slow circle around me, like an appraiser. "Nathan enjoys disruption," she said. "But disruption has consequences." "I'm aware," I replied. "Are you?" she asked. "Because people are already deciding what you are." I looked at her. "And what did you decide?" She stopped. "That you're either very dangerous," she said, "or very useful." That night, Nathan finally spoke. "You held your ground today," he said as we stood in the hallway. "Most people would have folded." "I didn't know folding was an option," I replied. He smiled faintly. "That's exactly the problem." "For who?" I asked. "For anyone who thought you were temporary," he said. As I went back to my room, I understood something with quiet certainty. The prank was over. The joke had died. What remained was something far more serious. They weren't laughing anymore. They were watching. The invitation arrived the next morning. Not to clean. Not to serve. To observe. Nathan's assistant found me in the east corridor, tablet in hand, expression unreadable. "Mr. Blackwood would like you present at the noon briefing," she said. "In the library." The library. No staff meetings happened there. I changed into a simple navy dress. Nothing dramatic, nothing submissive. When I stepped into the room, conversations paused. Men in tailored suits. Women with sharpened smiles. Papers spread across the long oak table like territory lines. Nathan stood at the head. "You're late," someone said to him. "I'm complete now," he replied. Every gaze turned to me. I took a seat near the end of the table. Hands folded, spine straight. No one offered me notes. No one explained context. That was intentional. They wanted to see if I would ask. I didn't. I listened. The discussion revolved around a stalled acquisition, numbers, public perception, timing. Voices overlapped. Tension crept in. "This will leak," someone said. "We can't move without exposure," another countered. Silence followed. Nathan looked at me. "What do you think?" The room stiffened. I didn't rush. "If it leaks," I said slowly, "it won't be because of the numbers. It'll be because too many people benefit from panic." A few brows lifted. "So what do you suggest?" a man asked skeptically. "Change the narrative," I replied. "Before anyone else decides it for you." "How?" "By letting the least threatening version of the truth out first." The silence this time was different. Interested. After the meeting, no one dismissed me. They measured me. "You've done this before," Victoria Hale said later, joining me by the window. "Yes," I replied. "Just not for people who confuse power with immunity." She smiled. "You're dangerous," she said. "Nathan likes that." "That's not my concern," I said. "Control is." That evening, Nathan found me alone in the study. "You didn't hesitate," he said. "Neither did you," I replied. He leaned against the desk. "You understand leverage instinctively," he said. "That's rare." "So is being underestimated," I said. "You should know." His gaze sharpened. "I didn't bring you into this to use you," he said. "No," I replied. "You brought me in to see if I'd survive." And he asked. I'm still here. Later that night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I thought about how easily the room had shifted, how quickly curiosity turned into dependence. That was when I understood the real danger. Not that they would push me out, but that they would pull me deeper. Because once people realize you're useful, they don't let go. They start negotiating. And I was no longer just part of the story. I was part of the strategy. I didn't feel powerful. That was the lie everyone else believed. From the outside, it looked like momentum. Meetings I was invited to, opinions that were suddenly valued, doors opening without explanation. But inside, I felt watched. Measured. Calculated. The shift was subtle at first. My schedule changed without discussion. My presence was requested, not optional. Decisions were delayed until I spoke, then rushed once I did. I had become a shortcut. And shortcuts always attract risk. The warning came from someone unexpected. Mrs. Caldwell found me in the service corridor late one evening, her posture rigid, her voice low. "You're being mentioned," she said. "By whom?" I asked. "By people who don't ask permission," she replied. "And don't like uncertainty." I didn't need clarification. "In this house," she continued, "everyone serves a function. Once that function becomes inconvenient, things change." I met her gaze. "And what function do you think I serve?" She hesitated. "That's what worries me." That night, Nathan and I argued for the first time. Not loudly. Not emotionally. Precisely. "You're letting them lean on me," I said. "Without defining limits." "They trust you," he replied. "They trust my usefulness," I corrected. "That's not the same thing." He exhaled slowly. "This world doesn't move on fairness." "I know," I said. "But it collapses when people stop consenting." That made him pause. A week later, I was asked to sit in on a call I shouldn't have heard. Voices filtered through the speaker, discussing contingency plans, legal insulation, reputational shields. Then my name came up. Not as a person. as a variable. If pressure increases, one voice said, she becomes a liability. The word landed hard. I ended the call myself. When Nathan confronted me, I didn't soften it. They're already planning how to move around me, I said. Or over me. I won't allow that, he said. You don't get to allow it, I replied. That's the problem. The silence between us stretched. Do you trust me? He asked finally. I answered honestly. Yes, I said. But I don't trust the system you're inside. The moment that changed everything came 2 nights later. I was leaving the estate when a car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down halfway. A man I recognized from the library meeting smiled faintly. Careful, he said. People don't like surprises that think for themselves. Then the car drove away. I stood there long after the taillights disappeared. That was when fear finally arrived. Not sharp. Clear. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I made a decision. If I was going to be treated like leverage, then I would choose where the pressure landed. I wasn't done yet. But I was done being quiet. Fear didn't make me reckless. It made me observant. I stopped reacting. Stopped questioning out loud. Stopped giving away the fact that I saw the game clearly. People relax when they think they've won. I agreed more often. Yes, when meetings were added. Yes, when files were forwarded late at night. Yes, when my name appeared on agendas without warning. But I also started taking notes. Not on paper. In patterns. I noticed who spoke first. Who interrupted whom. Who never raised their voice but always ended the discussion. Power had a rhythm. And once you heard it, you could follow it, or disrupt it. Nathan watched me carefully. You're quieter, he said one evening. I'm listening, I replied. That answer didn't comfort him. The opportunity came disguised as routine. A private strategy dinner. 5 attendees. No assistants. No recordings. I was invited last. That mattered. They debated a merger, public timeline, internal hesitation, media framing. I waited. Then I spoke. There's an assumption here that exposure is the threat, I said. It isn't. They turned to me. The threat, I continued, is losing control of who tells the story. Silence followed. Leak selectively, I said. But from a source that appears hostile. That way, when the truth emerges, you look transparent by contrast. Someone frowned. That's risky. So is stagnation, I replied. Eyes shifted. Calculations adjusted. After dinner, Victoria Hale pulled me aside. You're not improvising, she said. You're positioning. Yes, I replied. For what? She asked. For when someone decides I'm disposable, I said. Her smile faded. Smart, she said quietly. And dangerous. Later, Nathan confronted me in the study. You're manipulating outcomes, he said. I'm protecting myself. I replied. There's a difference. You didn't tell me. I didn't know who was listening, I said. That landed. The next morning, the narrative shifted exactly as planned. Articles appeared. Stock stabilized. The panic evaporated. No one credited me. That was intentional. By noon, the man from the car returned, this time in person. You're adaptable, he said. That's rare. I prefer precise, I replied. He smiled thinly. Stay that way, he said. It buys time. Time. That was all anyone ever bought. That night, alone in my room, I reviewed everything I'd learned. Who feared exposure? Who needed loyalty? Who underestimated silence? They thought I was surviving. They didn't realize. I was preparing. The pressure didn't come loudly. It came politely. A request to clarify my position. An invitation phrased as a courtesy. A conversation that pretended to care about my comfort. Those were always the most dangerous. Victoria Hale asked to meet me alone. No agenda. No witnesses. Just coffee in a private lounge overlooking the city. You've become a variable people can't ignore, she said, stirring her cup slowly. That's impressive. I didn't intend to, I replied. That's what makes it believable, she said. But now comes the difficult part. I waited. You need to decide, she said. Who you belong to. I looked at her. I don't belong to anyone. She smiled faintly. That answer only works before people start competing for you. Later that day, Nathan made his move. Not with words. With access. Files I'd never been allowed to see appeared on my tablet. Meetings I'd only overheard were now on my calendar. Names surfaced. Alliances, grudges, quiet betrayals. He wasn't asking me to choose. He was assuming I already had. That night, the argument we'd been avoiding finally happened. You're drawing lines around me, I said, without telling me where they lead. I'm protecting you, he replied. By forcing loyalty? I asked. By offering it, he said. Before someone else does. I stepped closer. And if I refuse? He didn't answer right away. That would make you exposed, he said carefully. The message arrived an hour later. Anonymous. Precise. You don't know how close you are to being replaced. I stared at the screen, heart steady, mind clear. They weren't threatening me. They were testing whether I understood the rules. I met Nathan in the hallway before dawn. I won't be your shield, I said. Or your weapon. He watched me closely. Then what will you be? I didn't hesitate. A mirror, I said. I'll reflect what people give me. Nothing more. His expression shifted, respect, edged with something else. That's dangerous, he said. Yes, I replied. But it's honest. By morning, the rumors started. That I was aligned. That I was disloyal. That I was indispensable. All at once. And I understood then. Standing still was no longer possible. Every step forward would cost something. The only question was whether I would pay in silence. Or in control. The truth arrived quietly. Not in a confession. Not in a confrontation. In a document that wasn't meant for me. I found it buried in a shared folder. Misnamed, misfiled, overlooked. The kind of mistake people make when they assume someone won't look twice. It was a profile. Not a resume. An assessment. My name at the top. Background notes. Behavioral observations. Adaptive under pressure. High emotional restraint. Low need for validation. I read every word slowly. They'd been watching long before the gala. The date on the file made my stomach tighten. 3 months earlier. Before the joke. Before the invitation. Before I ever stepped into their line of sight, at least officially. I wasn't pulled into the room on a whim. I was selected. The realization didn't make me angry. It made everything clear. The prank wasn't spontaneous. The risk wasn't accidental. The exposure wasn't a mistake. It was a test. And I'd passed. I confronted Nathan that evening. Not with accusation. With certainty. You knew, I said. He didn't deny it. You were observant, he said. Resilient. Unreactive. You engineered this situation, I said. I created a catalyst, he corrected. You decided what followed. I considered that. And if I had failed? I asked. You would have remained invisible, he said. Safely. Safely. I almost laughed. What was the end goal? I asked. To see if someone outside the system could move within it, he said. Without becoming corrupted. And now? I asked. Now, he said, they know you exist. I met his gaze. So do I. The next move came from the board. An offer. Formal. Strategic. A position created just for me. Authority without a title. Influence without exposure. Useful. Controlled. I read the terms once. Then closed the file. I didn't sleep that night. Not from fear. From clarity. They hadn't underestimated me. They'd gambled on me. And the house was waiting to see how I'd pay out. The following morning, I walked into the boardroom unannounced. Conversation stopped. Eyes lifted. I placed the document on the table. I understand the offer, I said. And I decline. Silence. But I continued, I'll propose something else. They leaned in. That's when I knew. The game wasn't over. It was finally mine to finish. The room waited. They always did, when they thought power was about to be claimed. I stood at the head of the table, not seated, not elevated, just visible. "I won't accept your offer," I said again calmly. "Not in its current form." A few glances exchanged. Controlled irritation. "Then why are we here?" someone asked. "Because I'm not leaving," I replied. "I'm renegotiating." I laid out my terms. No private title. No informal authority. No quiet influence that could be revoked without record. Everything documented. Everything transparent. "If I'm inside the system," I said, "then the system acknowledges me. Publicly." Someone laughed softly. "You're asking for protection." "No," I replied. "I'm removing your ability to deny responsibility." That silenced the room. Nathan watched without interrupting. I didn't look at him. This wasn't about trust anymore. It was about structure. "If that's unacceptable," I continued, "then I walk. With everything I've already seen." The threat wasn't explicit. It didn't need to be. Minutes passed. Calculations adjusted. Finally, Victoria Hales spoke. "She's right," she said. "Keeping her informal makes her dangerous. Formalizing her makes her accountable." "And visible," another added. "And unreplaceable," someone muttered. I smiled faintly. They noticed. The vote wasn't unanimous. It didn't have to be. By the time it ended, the room had shifted. Not toward me. Around me. Later that evening, Nathan found me on the terrace. "You didn't just survive," he said. "You altered the architecture." "I refused to disappear," I replied. "That makes you powerful," he said. I shook my head. "It makes me permanent." I didn't stay at the estate. I didn't need to. My name appeared where it hadn't before, on documents, on acknowledgments, on decisions that couldn't be undone quietly. I wasn't a symbol. I was a fixture. Weeks later, someone asked me if I regretted not taking the throne when it was offered. I told them the truth. "Thrones depend on people believing they can be taken away," I said. I chose something more stable. I hadn't entered their world by accident. And I hadn't left it unchanged. They thought they invited a maid. They didn't realize. They invited a recalibration. And this time the system remembered my name.